computer.
The future of Victorian infrastructure is green. Recycling Victoria has laid out a 10-year roadmap to a circular economy, a future where our state's public and private sectors will unite to prioritise sustainability. At the core of this are our public assets, the roads and railroads that connect us and ignite possibilities. But where does the change to green thinking begin? The Recycled First policy. Recycled First will require transport infrastructure projects to optimise the use of Victorian recycled and reused materials. This will see the use of recycled aggregates, glass, plastic, timber, steel, ballast, crushed brick, crumb rubber and reclaimed asphalt pavement take precedence over virgin materials. For information, technical advice and support on bringing your sustainable project innovations to life, drop ecologiQ a line. Recycled First, supporting purposely greener infrastructure.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our first innovation showcase for 2024. My name's Doyle. I'm the industry manager with ecologiQ, and I'll be the host for today. And co-hosting with me is my colleague Lauren Rowett, who's our senior industry advisor. Before we get started, I do want to acknowledge that we're dialing in remotely, that we still dial in, I think, unless we have any international visitors from traditional lands from across Australia. So for me, I'm dialing from the lands of the Bunurong people of the Eastern Kulin Nations. I like to acknowledge their elders past, present and emerging, and any Aboriginal or First Nations people we might have with us on today's showcase. So firstly, welcome and thank you for making your way to our Innovation Showcase. This is an initiative that we've been running for up to 3 years now, and it's just a great way for businesses and organizations to bring the latest and greatest in circular economy, innovations, products, and ideas to the major transport infrastructure sector. So you can see across the screen there, this is an initiative in partnership with the 6 flagship major transport infrastructure projects that are across Victoria. So for those who made it here today, obviously you'll get the information, but if you've missed it, you can actually still catch this presentation on YouTube afterwards, where it will be recorded and uploaded. And today's presentation will be shared with everyone who registered for this event. I think we had over 150 registrations, so hopefully most of you have made your way here to today's showcase. But if this is the first time you've come to an ecologiQ event, I'll take a moment just to explain who we are. So Lauren, myself, and the rest of the team at ecologiQ, we are public servants. We work for the Victorian Government, and ecologiQ is an initiative to roll out the Recycle First policy as part of a greater strategic step change towards a circular economy for Victoria. So what that means is that, with the major transport infrastructure projects here in Victoria, it gives us a real once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to catalyse the use of recycled and reused materials as part of that, again, greater step change towards really just being a bit smarter, greener and wiser with what we do with our resources and not seeing everything as waste. So key to that is our Recycle First policy. So this is a policy that's been in effect since March 2020. It applies to all the major transport infrastructure projects. So for many of you on the call here, I think you might be, if you're a construction contractor or a technical advisor, you're probably familiar with our policy. But if not, what it means is that all the projects being delivered under the transport umbrella at the moment need to, 1, optimize the use of recycled materials, and optimizing is key. There's no hard targets in the policy because it's not about telling you to use X percentage of recycled materials, but rather look at what makes most sense for your project. Look at your local supply chain, look at the carbon footprint of those materials, and how can you optimize those locally and help reduce our local waste stockpiles. And secondly, and really key to this, is that our projects are reporting on the quantity and volumes of recycled materials that have been used to date on the project. And that informs a lot of insight for our work and learnings as well. So for us, ecologiQ's focus areas, one, initiatives like this are part, I think, really step across all these major objectives that we're here to pursue market development. We believe that there's a healthy, thriving marketplace for Victorian recycled and reused materials. But really, we've got a number of businesses here that are coming in from both across the sea, across the ditch, and from other states and territories as well. So we're encouraging a best practice. And we're here to support businesses and such as the ones presenting here today with undertaking that technical approval, supporting with their research and innovation, and really collaborating, because it is all about building capacity for this sector. So. And I mentioned the data. Here in Victoria, it's all about how many MCGs you can fill. So we're happy to report that since the policy's been in effect, we have there's 3.4 million tonnes of materials have already been delivered through our transport infrastructure project. So that's enough to fill one MCG, and it's double what was used previously before the policy was introduced. So I think we're seeing a real step change with the work that's being done by the team, the engagement from the industry, and the policy's effect. So. Now, again, I said this is all about collaboration, so we can't get here and we can't do the good work that we do without our resident experts and key advocates. So firstly, can I introduce Andrew Papakostas, Principal Engineer with the Department of Transport and Planning, say hello, who's helping us today as a panel on this event. Andrew.
G'day, Joy, and good morning, everyone. So I'm Andrew Papakostas, Principal Engineer, Pavements and Materials with the Department of Transport and Planning. Some of the things I do, I work in the technical standards and specification space, both at a state and national level. And in terms of innovation and new products, anything in the pavement space, generally we're available to speak to industry and any proponents of new products. So if there's something new there, welcome to come in and have a chat about that product and where it fits into our suite of works that we do. Thanks, Toy.
Thanks, Andrew. And our owner in-house, Polly Gourlay-Phillip, Implementation Manager. Polly.
Thanks, Joy. Morning, everyone. So Polly Gourlay-Phillip, I've fairly recently joined the ecologiQ team, coming over from Rail Projects Victoria. So my background, sort of sustainability management, environmental engineering, and yeah, really excited to be part of this today. And I guess, you know, worth noting in the role I sit in at ecologiQ, we sort of engage with all the project teams across MTIA and suburban rail loops. So, you know, in a really well placed position to be able to talk about some of these new products that are coming through and work with the industry team. Thanks, Joy.
Thanks, Polly. And here I'm providing the rail perspective, Kerry Gagooses.
Thanks, Dewey. Good morning, everyone. Glad to be here. I've come here to bring a rail perspective on some of these great ideas and really act as a key advocate on our projects in promoting the use of recycled and reused materials. So glad to be here and look forward to see what we have in store for today's episode.
Wonderful. Thanks, Gary. And really just this is a bit of a call out to those in the audience. When I talk about our collaboration approach, we view every project that's being delivered in the state as a potential catalyst for change. So what that means is that every time a project adopts one of these materials or innovations, you know, we're seeing is moving that dial towards making this business as usual. So we're here to talk about how we might be able to work with you. So if you're out there, you could be a council project, you could be tendering for one of our works, you could already be in delivery on a major transport projects. You could be an asset owner, you might be an engineer, or you might be from the design perspective, or we also have our supply chain and manufacturers on the call. If you have an idea, please reach out to us. That's my call to action to you, because the showcase has been a great starting place for many innovations that have made their way on our projects, and they started out by pitching at this event, and afterwards someone here in the audience reached out and followed up and made that happen. So that's my call out to the audience. And just a little bit of highlights. So since ecologiQ's been around for the last 3 years, we've seen new products come into trials that are underway with and that's a photo of myself and a former colleague out observing the installation, but recovered carbon black going to asphalt in Victoria for the first time. We've worked to update 4 technical standards, and we've actually developed 3 specifications from scratch. So you can use recycled plastic noise walls and organics and roadside as some key examples. So. Now I'll hand over now to my colleague Lauren Rowett, who will take you through some of our resources, because if you aren't already on our Knowledge Hub, this is genuinely a treasure trove of information. Lauren.
Thanks, Toy. Yeah, this is just a quick little screenshot of what our Knowledge Hub looks like, and a bit of a rundown of some of the great resources that are on there. So they're really, really useful in terms of finding out what recycled and reused materials can be used in infrastructure currently, and also how to find them, and other, great really education and awareness pieces, case studies and things like that. And there's also some new training series videos around how to fill out those recycle first plans and documents, which we know can be quite daunting for the first time, but yeah, a really great resource there that's been added as well. If you don't have access yet, please do email us at the address you can see in the bottom right-hand corner there, and we can get that set up for you. All are welcome to come and use these resources. Next page, thanks, Toy. We also wanted to just announce today as well that we have a new update to our supplier map. So last year we fielded a lot of requests for the ability to be able to download lists of the suppliers and export those from the map. So we've been working on that in the background, and really, really pleased to be able to launch that today and say that it is currently live and ready to be used on the Knowledge Hub. It has the same functionality that you know and love from the previous version, but now that visual shows, as you can see there, a list of all the suppliers, and that'll change with any filters that you apply, and you can still click on the map and drill down to any individual supplier as well. One really key thing to remember when you're using this is that you will need to, on that table, just scroll across to the right to see the rest of the details, web addresses, contact details, things like that. But otherwise, yeah, all still there, still the same suppliers. And we also have the ability to export these lists as an Excel file. So to be able to do that, just hover over the three dots that you'll see, hover over the table rather, and the three dots will appear in that top right-hand corner of the table. Click on those dots, go to export data, data with current layout, which will be pre-selected, and then export, and you can download those lists. We've tried our best to make sure that access will still remain the same. So if you've been able to get into the map before, you should still be able to. But if you find that your access has dropped off, please do reach out to me and I'll make sure that I get that set up for you again.
Thank
I'll let you take this one, Joy.
No, don't worry. Yeah, and and there's another resource that we published actually at our conference last year. We have an innovation database. So I mentioned earlier we've been running our showcase events for 3 years now, and I think the last time I checked, we have over 54 entries of new and innovative materials. So if you were to gamify this, we're looking at new materials coming into the showcase. All that information is uploaded onto this database, and we'll work with those projects and or suppliers to move the adoption of those materials from sort of perhaps exploration right through to full approval, which means that they're commercially available, they've received all compliance, they've met all testing, and they're approved for use. So again, if you haven't got access to the Knowledge Hub, hop in a Knowledge Hub, check out the supply map. It's a great resource to help you find manufacturers. And if you're looking to pursue innovative materials or see what's already been approved, hop into our innovations register. You can see this is just a selection of some of the presenters that we've had here in the showcase before, but some of the great innovations that are sort of off the shelf and ready for you to adopt and explore and use on your projects. So now we've made our way to the live event. Just a little bit of housekeeping for those in the audience. You'll obviously realize you can't turn your cameras on. Doesn't mean you can't interact with us. So please, there's a chat function on Zoom. You're welcome to direct questions to us. I'll be fielding 3 presentations today. We'll be kicking off shortly with Bernadette Casey and Steve Bagshaw from UsedFULLY. We'll be talking to you about StrengthTex. And then after that, Ian and Paul from Blue Phoenix will be jumping on to tell you about the Incinerated Bottom Ash aggregate, before Tony Callista will be joining us from Danmar Plastics later on, talking about repoly. So the way this works is our presenters will present, and then after that we'll aim for about a 10-minute presentation, and then we'll have 10 minutes to field questions from our panelists. Again, for those in the audience, just use the Q&A function in Zoom to ask questions. If you have a particular question for a presenter, please direct that in your questioning. So if it's for Bernadette, for example, please in your questions note that this is the Bernadette question for her to answer. And as for our presenters, after you've finished pitching, you're welcome to hop in the Q&A and answer any questions live with the audience. So without further delay, I'll now hand over to Bernadette Casey and Steve Bagshaw from UsedFULLY to tell you about what's some great innovations that are happening across the ditch that we'd love to see here. Over to you, Bernadette.
Kia ora, thanks, Joy. I'm Bernadette Casey, CEO of UsedFULLY, and we're a clean tech company. We create high-value, high-performing products for the roading and construction industry made from unwanted textiles. As you can tell from my accent, we're a Kiwi company, but many of our suppliers of textiles are cross-Tasman companies or cross-Tasman organisations that have operations in New Zealand and in Australia. First slide, please. So why textiles? So we often think of textiles as being just the clothes we wear, but textiles are a really fundamental part of everyday life. Of course, they're what we wear, but they're also the uniforms of our police and our military and our frontline workers. They're the sheets and the towels and the blankets in our hospitals, our retirement homes, our hotels, our prisons, etc. And what we clothe and protect ourselves with is incredibly resource intensive. This graph shows Wellington City Council's waste from a volume perspective, and you can see textiles are the fifth highest by volume. In construction or timber is the highest per volume and what's going into our local landfill. But when we look at it, the West London waste profile, it shows again textiles are number 5 in terms of volume, but when we look at our CO2 emissions, it's this in the second place after food waste. So addressing textile waste is really crucial in terms of meeting our meeting our climate targets. So next slide, please. So understanding the outsized impacts of textiles, many regions are now regulating to ensure that these resource-intensive products do not end up in landfill. All 27 European states have effectively placed a ban on textiles going to landfill effective from next January 2025. And we know that Australia, in front of New Zealand, have initiated textile product stewardship schemes called Seamless. So having worked on textile development around the world for a number of years, we knew the barriers to circularity. We really understood the global value chains. And in terms of New Zealand and Australia, it was really difficult to loop textiles back into textiles because the value chains simply didn't exist. They've been centralised in Asia several decades ago. And so Australia, like New Zealand, traditionally, our textile industry was wool, but that's not the majority of the textiles that flow through the system. So what flows through are your animal fibres are all proteins, all your plant fibres are cellulose, and then your synthetic textiles are a petrochemical mix. So we looked at how we could apply those from a resource level, like where are the high volume places that they could go to, and that's why into the building and roading industry was an obvious choice. Next slide, please. Actually, we'll just flip through that one. The next one. Thank you. So in 2022, we laid the first road in the centre of Wellington from our beachhead product StrengthTex. And we trialled it in asphalt, and we've demonstrated that in asphalt in a laydown trial in Wellington City Central. We put it into ultra thin asphalt, and Steve, our chief chemist, will be able to speak to that more in terms of what the composition was. We replaced imported fibre component in SMA and demonstrated that we can add StrengthTex to all grades of asphalt. And we've tested it over the last year and a half, and it's shown that it's improved performance and the durability of the road. It improves the strength and the durability of the bitumen. It reduces drain down with improved modulus, so the response to a load or a force, and the cohesion. Above and beyond that, the displacement of imported product with a local product reduces the amount of textiles going to a landfill and its associated emissions. We've also demonstrated the recyclability and the properties of recycled fibre modified asphalt are actually better than the standard wrap or the recycled asphalt. So that was demonstration into asphalt, and then we've looked at it into what we call chip seal in New Zealand. I believe you call spray seal in Australia. And the test at the moment, it's the test that we've done demonstrate it extends the bitumen by about 10% and improves the rheological and physical properties of the bitumen. These improved temperature tolerance and reducing cracking in cool temperatures and a reduction in flow in hot temperatures. And it's shown to improve the chip retention. So now I'm going to invite Steve, our materials scientist, to talk about that in more detail.
Kia ora tātou. I hope everyone can hear me. Ko Steve Bagshaw, Takuingoa, ko Aotearoa New Zealand, te motu. So I'm here just to give you a very brief rundown of the physical improvements in a laboratory context that adding StrengthTex to bitumen to make asphalt or spray seal binders can do. So it's very brief. We've got a lot more testing than what we can show here. So one of the first thing is to look at is the viscosity profile. We had two different types of StrengthTex, what we call 1x or 3x, we call superfine or ultrafine, which is in reference to the size of the particle, the fibre particles. We can see that at 125 degrees using rotational viscosity, the viscosity tends to increase. And there's one value there where it's gone down. We could repeat that, and I'm sure it will be different to that. Bearing in mind that these numbers are still well below the New Zealand NZTA, New Zealand Transport Authority specification for maximum viscosity for delivery as in a chip seal. So the point is to show that we can improve the change in the viscosity by adding StrengthTex microfiber. The second graph there on the right hand side is the cohesive energy. And again, what we can see is that at, sorry, I've got my video covering that anyway. This is at low temperature where cracking might occur in the bitumen, and because the values are very, very high for cohesion in a cold bitumen, what we see is that adding the fibre does improve the cohesion of the bitumen by clearly not huge amounts, but they are statistically significant amounts. And the same can be said for bitumen at elevated temperature on the roads, sort of the 45 to 50 degrees Celsius. So if we go to the next slide, the last slide, thanks. So this is a little bit busy, this graph. So we've the blue and the light green correspond to the left-hand side of the graph, the penetration or softening points. So these tests are looking at the base bitumen as opposed to an asphalt. How adding the StrengthTex fibre indeed changes both the penetration and the softening point. And the green graph corresponds to the right-hand side, which is the elastic modulus of the bitumen. So what I wanted to show in this graph, which you can look at your leisure later on when you download the presentation, is that by adding StrengthTex to various amounts, we can modify the penetration grade of the bitumen between two grades. So we've got 180, 200, and 80, 100 grade bitumens there on the left-hand side of the graph. And then by adding StrengthTex in various amounts, we can modify those properties so that we are mimicking a different penetration grade without changing the bitumen itself. So that's really a summary of that data. I'm happy to answer any more technical questions you may have. We do certainly have data from. Sorry, we've got one more, and this is asphalt. This is indirect tensile modulus testing from asphalt cores made with fibre modified asphalt. This will be SMA samples, where we can see that with the polycotton at a normal loading, so this is 0.65 weight% of fibre as per the NZTA specification for SMA, that the tensile modulus is improved significantly over that of a standard, even standard fibre modified SMA using top cell or other fibre modifications. So from a materials chemistry perspective, what we believe is occurring here, certainly in the chip seal space, is that we're creating what's called we can term a microcomposite, where we're adding a fibre into a viscoelastic matrix, which is allowing that matrix properties to be modified by the addition of a fibre into the matrix. So it sits in between the concept of nanocomposites, where we add nanoparticles into a polymer, and macrocomposites, which we consider like fiberglass or carbon fibre materials. So we're sitting in between that, but in a viscoelastic matrix.
Thank you, Steve.
Yeah.
And just very quickly back to ask. So we are looking for field trials in Victoria to trial the asphalt in both public and private sector, like housing, developments, etc. We aim to build a commercial plant in Australia in 2025. We're in the midst of a capital raise. And in the meantime, our other ask is we're looking for toll manufacturing partners in Australia. So if anyone is interested, please get in touch. Any questions?
Thank you. I think I'm not sure if Kerry put his hand up first or Andrew, but I might go to Andrew being our road expert, and then I'll Kerry next. Andrew.
Thanks, John. Thanks, Bernadette and Steve, for the presentation. Very interesting. I know there's a lot behind that, so those other questions I've got will be saved for another time. But just to understand the process, you talked about textiles, what makes up textiles. So do you sort the textiles to get the properties you want to develop the StrengthTex fibre?
We source them directly from commercial suppliers. So we work with the large laundries like Alsco, Taylor's, Allied Laundries, etc. So we know exactly what they're decommissioning. We know what their procurement is. We know exactly what that construction of those textiles are in terms of dimension and fibre length, etc., etc.
Yeah, because it's the properties of those textiles will no doubt vary and how they behave in asphalt at the various temperatures is a key part of it.
So Andrew, so if I may, so early on the thinking was to replace directly the cellulose fibre from top cell or via top with cellulose, such as cotton from textiles. But during the testing, it did indeed show that a polycotton product showed improved properties over cellulose product.
Yep, so that's a bit, you've gone beyond just the use of a fibre for drain down to what sounds like something that you add to bitumen to modify the characteristics of the bitumen to get other enhanced properties.
Well, indeed, your suggestion that addition is just to modify drain down, where you're doing that, you're modifying the drain down by modifying the properties of the bitumen by adding the fibre. But indeed, yes, we've found that it goes beyond that. Yeah.
Okay. And so in terms of the, you asked about field trials. Normally, you need a asphalt manufacturing partner as a key part of the process. So I noticed you had, I think it was Fulton Hogan in New Zealand jumped on board, and that trial seemed to have gone very well. So hopefully you do get an asphalt manufacturing partner here in the facility here, and no doubt we'll be talking again in future. So thank you.
Thank you, Andrew.
Thank you. I think technically Kerry did have his hand up first, so Kerry, I'll defer to you next.
Thanks a lot, Dewey, and great presentation and an exciting new product. I'd more of a constructability question, and I was just curious to see by adding these fibers to the asphalt mix, how does it maybe change the property to affect the compaction, the rolling, on the setting of the asphalt? Could you maybe elaborate on what effects it has during construction?
Are you still here? Oh, we've lost Kerry. I'm still here, so shall I carry on? Maybe my
Steve, we can still hear you.
I can still hear you, Steve. Wait.
Cool. Yeah, so all the testing, yeah, great. All the testing that was done in the field during that trial showed that there was no change in compactability or deliverability by adding StrengthTex to the asphalt mix. And indeed, that was probably mostly because we were simply replacing via top or top cell with StrengthTex directly as in a pelletized form with this an asphalt specific binder. And so we were doing nothing other than changing the nature of the fiber that was used in the product.
All right, cool. Thanks for that.
So the answer is that that there was no compactability.
No change. Yep.
Thank you, Kerry. Polly, certainly last but not least.
Thank you. And I think Andrew somewhat answered. I've got two questions actually, but the first one was just a kind of observation from that modulus testing that the cotton or the poly cotton had a better result than the more synthetic. So I just wanted to make sure that I sort of had understood that, but I think from the discussion before that makes sense.
Yes, it does seem that indeed the poly cotton coming out top.
Which I guess would make sense, that the better quality fibers are going to have a better result.
Actually, yeah.
The second part of my question,
I think my internet's a bit dodgy here.
Yeah, I think you might have a little bit of a delay there, Steve. The second part of my question, and it might be too early, was just around whether you were thinking about any kind of product certification. So whether that was a sort of a life cycle assessment or a material circularity index, EPD, something to sort of be able to talk about the emissions associated with the product.
So, if I may, we have an LCA, a preliminary LCA done, but that's preliminary at this time. Further to that, we haven't progressed that far yet.
Okay, fantastic. And is that something that you're not able to share yet because it is a preliminary, but you'd be looking to further develop?
That's right. We've been told by the providers that it's not for dissemination at this point.
Yeah. Okay. Is there anything you can share from that around the emissions like comparison, or is it too early to know?
It's too early to know. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Not a problem. Thank you, Steve and Bernadette. So again, key takeaways. I think we're looking for a partner to trial here in Victoria in 2025. I know you said the first Australian plant, but hopefully it's the first Victorian plant as well. There's a number of questions that have popped up in Q&A for yourself, Bernadette and Steve, so feel free to hop in there and answer those questions. And thank you again for sharing StrengthTex.
Thanks, Jay.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'll hop back to the other job I'm doing today. Thanks very much.
No problem. Thank you, Steve. And I now introduce to the virtual stage Paul, Avissa, and I think Ian's probably still caught in transit somewhere. So Paul, over to you. Tell us about Blue Phoenix.
Yeah, thanks, Julie and Lauren and Polly, Andrew, Kerry, and the entire ecologiQ team for this opportunity to talk to the group about the manufacture and use of IBA aggregates, or IBA. Hey, I think, like you said in your opening, Julie, it was there's a drive towards the use of recyclable material in Victoria, and you also mentioned recyclable aggregate material, and that's sort of where we're coming from. So found that your opening to be very appropriate for us. So thank you for that. Well, by way of introduction, yes, I'm Paul Visser. I'm the Commercial Development Manager for Australia. I'm actually based in Brisbane, but I do travel around the country. So I've been in Victoria a couple of times. I've had the opportunity to meet with the ecologiQ team and with the Victorian EPA as well in regards to this discussion and the use of IBAA. Ian Linus is our Managing Director. As Dewey said, he's probably in transit somewhere, so I've been given the opportunity to present to you today. I'm hoping he will join in at some stage, so we'll see how we go. Thanks, Dewey. Next slide. Just a quick agenda there. So I'll talk briefly about where Blue Phoenix Group and where we've come from, the IBA process, transforming into a recyclable product, and regulation for and responsible reuse. So moving on. So where did we come from? So Blue Phoenix actually started in the UK. So it came around as a result of the energy from waste industry growth that happened through the UK and Europe, where our founder identified that there was a residual waste product that came out of the incineration process. And as a result of that, he worked towards how he could grab that waste, that residual, and divert it from landfill, because obviously we don't want it to go to landfill, because he identified that there was actually material still within that residual that could be used. Thanks, Dewey. This is just briefly, this just shows you where the process happens. I'll just close my screen a little bit there. So you would all be familiar with your waste bin at home in your residence. Mine has a red top, my wheelie bin. Some councils have different colors, but predominantly it's red. So in normal circumstances, that waste would be straight to landfill, collected by your waste company and taken to landfill. Energy from waste is the incineration of that actual waste that diverts from landfill. And as I mentioned before, you've got a product that comes out, a residual that comes out at the end, called Incinerated Bottom Ash. Now, that Incinerated Bottom Ash is when Blue Phoenix Group kicks in. We take that product, that waste residual, and what we specialize here is that we actually extract the metals out of that residual, so that you'll find that there's ferrous and non-ferrous metals still within that residual, and then once that's been removed, we then go through to extract the rest of it, which is the aggregate material, which can be modified into a safe and reliable aggregate for reuse. Thanks, Dewey. What you'll see there is a couple of examples of our plants. Operational excellence as it commenced in 1996 in the UK. In the last 23 years, the Blue Phoenix Group has actually had 20 million tonnes of IBA aggregate that's been used in road sub-base as a material within the UK, Europe and USA. Let it be known there has not been any environmental issue or mechanical failure in any of that 20 million tonnes that's been used. Our focus is purely on the aggregate material, so that we can return it and to be reused as a product in line with the circular economy process. The metals that are extracted through this process, the ferrous and non-ferrous, they're fines. They are sent, whilst we separate it, we then send it to our dedicated refinery called QR Metals, and that we can recover to -2 millimeters We're the only one in the world that can actually do that. So anywhere from 6 millimeters down is where the value of that metal fractions are. So that's your valuable stuff. So that's your platinum, your gold, your silver, your cobalt residues. So to be able to extract that would normally have gone to landfill, provides opportunity to reuse that material. Thanks, Jerry. So whilst Blue Phoenix now has 65 IBA facilities around the world, welcome to Australia. This is the first one that's being built. It's now fully commissioned. It's to support the new energy from waste plant for Virtus in Kwinana, Western Australia. Now that energy from waste plant's about to kick off. They're just in the finals commissioning in the first half of this year, so we're expecting to receive product from around June, July this year, and it'll be processed through this facility. So I look forward to that one getting up and running, and we'll be welcoming visitors to come and have a look at that in operation. So of the 100% of the IBA, Incinerated Bottom Ash, that is received by our plant, approximately 85% is made up of minerals. Between 5 and 10% is ferrous metals, and 1 to 5% non-ferrous. So that's your good stuff. Thanks, Huey. So 85% of the material comes through as an aggregate material, and as a snapshot of what the type of material it looks like. It is certainly sustainable and a cost-effective building solution alternative to virgin aggregate. It's highly effective as a sub-base or bulk fill in roadways and structural platform civil projects. It's low carbon. It has excellent physical properties in that it's non-frost, susceptible, get the word out, no plastic, and low bulk density. And obviously it doesn't go to landfill. So we're supporting the circular economy in that process. Got a couple of examples coming up in the next couple of slides, I think, Dewey. So here you'll see it's materials being used as a sub-road base, also being used in pipe bedding and backfill. Can be used in road constructions or for industrial unit flooring, warehousing, etc., etc. New estates for pathways and road construction. If there's any English people on the call or English descent, you may know of the Everton Football Club in the UK. So the sub-base for road and pathways was used around that building construction just recently. Just to let you know, we're currently assisting a couple of various municipalities in regards to the use of IBA aggregates. This is one that we're currently working on with the Dubai municipality, for the use of the IBA material. That's they're just about fully commissioned their new energy from waste plants, the largest one in the world. It's going to process 2 million tons of waste per annum, which means there's around about 400,000 tonne of incinerated bottom ash, which we will then generate into incinerated bottom ash aggregate materials for use on what they've identified in road dividers, pipe and sewage bedding, bulk aggregate, sub-road base, subterranean backing blocks, and land reclamation. Thanks, Siri. The exciting thing is that we're now heading down the path of what else can we do with this process, and we're looking at producing a low carbon filler for the cement industry. Blue Phoenix has a pilot plant that's been operational now for 2 years over in Europe, and they've just built the first commercialized plant which is due to commence in the next few months, and we'll be obviously watching that with keen interest and with a target of bringing it to Australia within the next 18 months. So yeah, thanks Julie, Lauren, Polly, Andrew, and Kerry for the opportunity to present what we're doing, and yeah, we look forward to the opportunity to work with the Victorian representatives towards the potential use of IBA aggregates and assisting the various government and all the different levels in regards to utilising recyclable material in Victorian projects. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. Now I invite our panelists to Polly.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks, Paul. Really interesting. I think I had actually heard of you back over in the UK, so it's good to see.
Oh, that's handy.
Yeah. I just wanted to check. So you mentioned there looking at using the aggregate to go back into cement, or is it, sorry, as a cement replacement in the concrete? Would that be just to replace the aggregate, the virgin aggregate that would normally go into the concrete? Is that the intent?
There will be a component of that, not obviously replacing in full.
Yeah. Okay. Do you know sort of what percentages, or is it too?
No, it's a bit early to tell at this stage, Polly.
Okay. Cool. Thank you. Really interesting.
Thank you, Polly. Andrew.
Yeah, Paul, thank you for the presentation.
Thank you, Andrew.
Paul, the product, the aggregate that's derived from the process, do you do further processing on that aggregate to meet whatever the target application is in a road-based sense? So, do you provide a greater product? Do you have to provide more crushing? Do you have to blend it with other crushed rock to get the right matrix? Is that all part of what you envisage being part of your supply process in the future?
Yeah, it'll form part of the volume of sub-road based material.
Right.
Yep.
Right. And given that you're dealing with a waste product to begin with, in terms of the incineration of a waste product, again, the outputs, the aggregate and its consistency in its attributes, based on all that UK experience, is it a quite a consistent product?
Yeah. Yes. We've actually found it to be very consistent throughout most council municipal areas. I mean, you look at particularly in Europe, a lot of the energy from waste plants are built within suburban regions because they're responsible for handling their own waste. So the actual energy from waste plant we found that it's been consistent across most counties and municipal areas, type of material that's put into their waste bin, which then generates the residual that comes out at the end to be fairly consistent.
Right. And given that the plant, there's already a plant about to go operational in Perth, no doubt you've been talking to our colleagues, the Main Roads WA, about applications and your product meeting their specifications. And
yes, yeah, Western Australian Main Roads and other government authorities and the EPA are all fully on board. That's the picture of the plant there behind me. Yep. I don't know if you can see it, but yeah, it's they're all approved, ready to go.
No, we'll be looking to leverage off what testing that state does, and its the results and how they apply in Victorian context, which I'm sure they will. So I look forward to seeing some product testing and product on the ground. So
yeah, as I said, Andrew, we're open to welcome anyone who wants to come and see that can see some value in the use of it, to come across to Western Australia once we've got it up and running there mid-year, by all means, talking to your counterparts.
Thank you, Paul.
Sorry, I just had one other question. Just if there was any intent to look at setting up anything in Victoria, or were you talking to?
Yes, so we're obviously in the background with the energy from waste developers who are looking at a couple of areas. I think there's Maryvale, Sunbury, and one with, I think, through Prospect Hill. So yeah, there's obvious talk of energy from waste plants within Victoria. Yet we're in discussions with all of them in regards to providing the IBA processing, so that we can do exactly what we're doing in Western Australia and bring that to Victoria.
Cool. Thanks, Paul.
Thank you. Kerry.
Thanks, Paul. Great presentation. Very interesting. I had no questions, so thanks for your time. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Kerry.
Terrific. Thank you, panelists. So, Paul, it looks like they're pretty keen to see when IBA show here in Victoria one day. So thank you again for the presentation.
We're very keen to come.
Wonderful.
Thank you, Jerry.
So for our next presentation, I now invite Tony Callister from Dunbar Plastics. Now, Tony, I believe you're dialing in from the Brisbane Convention. So if you're there, hopefully you found a nice quiet place to hop on.
Can you hear me, Di?
Yes, loud and clear.
Okay, I might just keep the video off for a little bit because the internet seems to be dropping in and out a little bit. So that's probably the smartest way. But, yeah, look, hi, everybody. My name's Tony Callister. Some of you may know me from recent history in other products, but I'm now here to present about macrosynthetic fibres for concrete, a new product that we developed called repurpose. Next slide. Thanks, Doy. Okay, a bit of brief outline of what I'm going to cover today is on the macrosynthetic fibre in reinforced concrete, where and why we use the repoly, repoly in design, the benefits of using it, some examples of use, and the role we play in future infrastructure. Next slide, thanks, Doy. So what is repoly, macrosynthetic fibre? But it's made from 100% recycled plastic. It's used to replace your steel mesh in your footpaths, shed user paths, those type of non-structural elements, as well as some precast items. It replaces that steel mesh. It's a much more sustainable and effective alternative to traditional steel reinforcement in concrete, used in many sort of applications that you're currently doing even in big build in Victoria. Next slide, please, Doy. So the key benefits of using macrosynthetic fibre are pretty much we get a faster construction time, so we're replacing that steel mesh, reducing the installation time, reducing the labour, and the fibre. We actually end up with a three-dimensional reinforcement because of the fibre being mixed into the concrete. So therefore, we're also not worrying about our steel being put in the correct position because the product's made from 100% recycled plastic. We've managed to create waste that would have ended up into landfill and reducing our emissions compared to using steel mesh, probably in the vicinity, depending upon an application, anywhere from 80 to 90% CO2 reduction. A much greater improved durability because the fibre intersect micro cracks at their early stage, and so therefore help to stop them become major macro cracks, which actually enhances the durability. And obviously being made from plastic, they can't corrode, so we could theoretically say that we've cured concrete cancer in these applications. Gives us much more flexibility in our design, so we could have nice curved paths and all that sort of stuff without ending up with lots of waste from offcuts mesh. So from a design and an architect's perspective, they could actually have, nice snaking paths, etc., and actually end with much more efficient use of materials. And when fibres are put into concrete, we get a much better dissipation of the energy, especially under things like impact and obviously repeated loads. Any in the pavement industry would understand that usually fatigue when loading pavements, etc., that's one of the areas where they have actually fail over time. So it actually gives us a bit of a greater fatigue resistance. Next slide, please, Dory. So for replacement for our mesh, we have a pretty standard sort of range where 62, which is not really used very much anymore. We'd use a minimum of 4 kilos. We believe that because of a couple of standards out there, MRTS 273 in Queensland require a minimum of 4. Vic Road 703 sort of asks for 4 to replace SL72 mesh. So we basically look at 4 as our minimum, obviously 5 for replacing SL82 mesh, and 6 for replacing SL92 mesh. As a rule of thumb, we've found over many years of my involvement in these type of products, we've found that this works very, very well. And we know just recently with some stuff we've done with Repoly that this will work quite well. Next slide, please, Doy. Obviously, from an applications perspective, here we've got a couple of applications and some footpaths there at Ballarat Council that are using it for, and also some hard stand areas outside warehouses that are being done, where we've been doing quite a bit of work in New Zealand with the product already. And so as an example, next slide, please, Doc. So from a cost savings perspective, and obviously a very key function in any new products, etc., there's obviously a material save because we reduce that steel procurement and handling costs and any other associated costs with having steel on site. With labour efficiency, obviously no more labour to actually install the mesh. So therefore we've sort of really taken one trade out of the equation, if you like. When we're working on a brownfield site, for instance, where we've actually got traffic control required, as an example there with a small traffic island there, we've actually got to have traffic control in place. Now, you know, for the concrete for that, there might have been about 4 or 5 cubic metres of concrete tops. But the traffic control might have cost $5,000 a day. Now, if we can actually reduce that time for the actual construction process, and we can actually reduce the costs quite dramatically, obviously, because if we can take a day off a program, for instance, then that might save an enormous amount of money, be some with materials, but much more with comes to that things like traffic control. We've got reduced inspections requirements because there's no mesh to actually inspect. As I said, no storage on site for mesh, and allows us to optimize our designs as well with having much waste from steel mesh. Next slide, please, Doyle. So when it comes to designing macrosynthetic fibre reinforced concrete slabs, we use the same principles as what we would do for a conventionally reinforced slab. We determine our loads and subgrade. We choose our concrete strength based on standards and requirements. For instance, Vic Road 703 will give us clear guidance on what we need to use. And to show you a path as an example, we need to use a VR 330-32 MPA mix, which is specific to and needs to be approved under Vic Road 703.14. We then will calculate our slab thickness using standards of Westergaard or Myhoff type systems, design processes. We detail our joints. We work out what our correct fibre dose should be, and then we look at any special design considerations that might be there for a project. And that's the same as what we would do for a conventionally reinforced slab. The only real difference is that we're not putting steel mesh in there, we're putting fibres. Next slide, please, Joy. So one of the key factors that I've found over my experience of being involved with these products and another product is that you'll probably know very well, is that it's really, really important to be able to provide the project with support services. And so therefore at Danbar with our Repoly product, we're going to be able, we provide design assistance, specific engineering design when it's required. Obviously we have an EPD, where myself being my background being an actual tradesman, so therefore when it comes to placing and finishing concrete, we provide guidance right down. You know, I'm even happy to come on sites, which I have done in past, to actually go through with the guys on site, make sure they know how to use the products properly and end up with a good result. We provide some costing analysis so it can outline where the benefits and savings is. One of the things that we're very proud of at Danbar Plastics is that all of our products are packaged by NDIS workers from McCullum's in Ballarat. And they, just as a company, generally across the board, with not just this product, but other products, we've created over 50,000 hours over the last 11 years of NDIS employment, so which we're something we're very proud of. The other thing is to basically understand that we need to help provide and actually have comply with standards. Next slide, please, Doy. For supporting it for design, for instance, to be able to get them to be comfortable to use it, asking as well, I've learned we ask that golden question, what do we need for you to sign off on this project? Is the best thing to ask an engineer so you can actually get what information is and then actually provide it for them so they can feel comfortable. So we provide test results and data showing the performance of it, compliance with standards, for instance. I submitted all the information for repolling to Fred Andrus Donis just before Christmas and received approval under Vic Road 703. And we've also submitted all our stuff for TMR Queensland and for MRTS 273. We'll also provide mixed design recommendations. I've got a fairly large background in concrete, so I'm more than happy to help out in that space. Where environmental performance data from, we have a little carbon calculator where we basically, from our EPD, where we're able to calculate from that, comparing against EPD, for instance, for something like infra build. So we're comparing apples against apples. We can see where our benefits come, provide jointing detail guidelines, dosage guidelines, and then collaborate with the engineers so that we can actually work through the process to get the products into the projects and have a successful outcome. Next slide, thanks, Joy. So Repolly's role in infrastructure going forward, obviously, it's 100% recycled synthetic fibre, so we now have another on the marketplace. We're obviously playing a role in the circular economy by reusing waste plastics. As I said, we're very proud to be associated with McCallum Industries in Ballarat, and that's supporting their workforce where they package all of our products. We're reusing waste plastic for infrastructure, and in the areas where we're using these products, it's a benefit for our society. Most of our taxes go into like footpaths and these type of areas, reducing our CO2 and speeding up construction. We've had our sustainability consultants, Inti, actually help identify our sustainable development goals that we actually contribute to. And so we're very proud of that as well. Next slide, please, George. So with that, I'll leave it there and I look forward to your questions. Thanks very much for your time, everybody.
Thanks, Tony. Well done. I'm sure I'm dialing in from, I'm sure, very challenging conditions. Kerry.
Thanks, Tony. Great presentation. And thanks for noting as well the status of that approval with DTP. So do we actually have mixed designs on the shelf ready to go, or would projects need to still submit those through?
Well, all I'd really have to look at from a design perspective would be look at the project, and then we would just provide you with some standard drawings that we use. I'll give you the, you probably know of a product called eMesh.
Yeah,
I invented eMesh. I just no longer work for that company. I'm now working for Danbar Plastics, who are the manufacturers of these products. So I've spent the last 12 months developing a new one, which has basically got probably about a 10% improved performance from the testing results we've seen, about a 10% carbon, less carbon, and obviously is cheaper.
So if a project wants to use this product, their engineers, they can't do the design, they still need to engage your team. Is that correct? Or can they do the design themselves, the substitution of the mesh for this fibers?
Yeah, they can do the design themselves, or they can engage with myself. And I'm happy to give any advice that they require in that space. It's fairly straightforward. They've been using macrosynthetic fibers and for a number of years now already in Big Build, which I was involved in getting into the line. As I've said to Doy and to Lauren and many people now in the industry, I'd like the people to now actually not necessarily start using brand names, not my brand name, but actually start using a terminology known as let's have a macrosynthetic fibers made from 100% recycled plastic. So therefore, we've got a level playing field for more than one product on the market, rather than trying to, have branding. In the past, there was only ever one brand.
Oh, thanks, Tony. That's good. That's useful information. I'll pass it on to people I think might be interested within the project. So yeah, thanks again, mate.
No worries.
Thanks, Tony. Polly.
Yeah, I don't really have any questions, but I guess just to note that this has been, pretty successful across a lot of the RPV projects. I know on Triple R, they've been looking at using synthetic fibres. So yeah, good to see another product on the market. And thanks for the presentation.
So, my pleasure.
Thanks, Tony. Andrew.
Look, just to concur with Polly, as Tony, as you indicated, this, your specification compliance, you've previously had approval, so there's a fairly easy pathway forth for those wanting to use macro-synthetic fibres. So all the best, Tony, and thank you for your presentation.
So, nice to see you again, Andrew. And yeah, mate, no problem at all. Like, look, it's been an interesting journey. Obviously, this is second time round for me, if you like. So in that space, I'm looking forward to it. And we've already got quite a good response from many of the level crossing alliances already that are quite interested. But you know, my whole goal was to formally go through this with yourselves as well, and you know, be helpful as possible.
No worries. Thank you.
Thanks, Andrew. Thanks, Polly. Now, Tony, there is a question for you in the audience, but I'll read it out because obviously to help you with where you're at the most. So the question is from Priya. Hi, Tony. With your employment of NDIS staff, which is awesome, by the way, are you considered a social enterprise?
We actually don't employ those people who work with McCallum's, BRI in Ballarat. So what we do is we're a manufacturer and obviously seller. We manufacture the products in the raw form, if you like, and it just goes into big bulk containers. It is then sent around the corner to McCallum's, which is about less than a kilometre from where our factory is, so to speak. And then they package all of the products into the boxes. So, and they have been doing so for many, many years so far, and we'll be continuing to do so because as we upscaled as a company to make this grow, you remember, Dor, when we first started with all these type of products back in the day, we were selling about 4 or 5 tonne a year. So I think these sort of products are now maybe 200 plus a year are going out the door of these type of products. And all the NIS people do all the packaging. They've assured us that even if we were to double again, they have capacity to keep doing so. Yeah, we use them, we pay them to do that work for us.
Thank you. Another question also from Priya. Has there been any testing of plastic fibers breaking down over time to create the equivalent of microplastics ending up in waterways as shared user paths degrade? Consider New South Wales EPA's alert that came out last month.
No, I think I know what Priya is talking about, actually, because there was an example in New South Wales where they did some open channel drains and some other areas, and the quality of the finishing work, the concrete was pretty poor. I'll be up front. Wasn't using my product, but it was very poor, and there was a lot of fibres on the surface. Now, the fibres, the repoly fibres that we have do have a UV stabilizer in them, so therefore they will not break down, you know, or will take a very, very long time to break down out in the atmosphere. Hence why we don't want them to go into the because they'll probably float around and won't end up as microplastics. They'll remain as microplastics for quite a long time. But because the fibres are embedded into the concrete, there should never be an issue. If the surface of the concrete is worn off and we actually start to see fibres, well, we've also got an issue with the fact that our surface no longer complies to any of the OH&S sort of scenarios, and it could potentially be slip hazard or something in that space. So there'd be remediation done on the surface once it had gotten to that point, because there'd be other issues as well that actually would probably be bigger than worrying about the microplastics that may eventually come from where, but it would be a very long time that would occur from.
Thanks, Tony. Polly, did you have any comments to add?
No, I think Tony summarised that really well, but I think just noting it's really about, how the concrete's laid and the right use for it. I think the New South Wales example was, a poor choice of product for the application, which unfortunately had bad consequences. So,
yes, I got actually brought into that as a consultant, obviously as someone who's been involved with these products quite extensively, and was asked actually about, hey, what happened here? And one of the things that I was able to actually say, look, this probably could have been solved by purely and simply having an actual proper pre-start meeting with the actual contractors and actually giving them the information, because there's a couple of special tools that I've sort of over the time encouraged people to use, and one of those being like what we call a concrete roller, a wire mesh roller. When they use that, we never had any issues whatsoever, and it was actually one of the tools that Transport for New South Wales have now approved for, so they're using these type of products on the M12, for instance, extensively.
Fantastic. Thanks, Tony. Thank you, Polly. Now, so that brings us to the end of today's showcase. So again, please thank our panelists and presenters for taking the time to talk to you about the latest and greatest innovations. I think for those in the audience, if you're interested, please reach out. You're welcome to contact our presenters directly. We'll be sending out their contact details and a copy of their presentation as well. So key takeaways from today, please hop on our Knowledge Hub. It is one of the fastest ways you can find out about what's happening. Follow us on LinkedIn. That's also in terms of comms. It's where we probably get our most up-to-date information out to the people. And over the course of the year, we're going to be having upcoming masterclasses, online webinars and events. And I think on Friday, March 15, we'll be organizing one of our online exchange events. So this is a little bit like online speed dating, where we'll be, if you want to meet more manufacturers like some of those that presented today, we can actually organize a round robin of 15-minute introductions for you to meet with those sorts of organizations. So if you're out there, you're working on a project, you're from a local council, or you're a technical advisory, but you're in a position to potentially procure, then please, I encourage you to come along to that event. Again, thank you for coming to the ecologiQ Showcase, and enjoy the rest of your weekend. Thanks all.
Thank you. Bye.
Thanks all. Have a wonderful weekend.
Thanks everybody. Cheers. Have a nice weekend.